Because I feel like the first thing that we actually have to discuss is, off the top of my head, I think it might actually be the weird thing. If you remember, this ties into a past episode. Obviously, on the past 2 episodes, we've discussed this BLG jungle change where they've taken Shad0w from LGD, and then it's initially, this honeymoon period's working like a motherfucker. It's looking great. They're like winning loads of their games again. They're looking good. He himself even's having pop-offs. And the joke is, Yamato, it's like everyone really did just forget this guy existed. Because you know the joke is, you probably saw it on Reddit even, there were people initially on those first games that were like, you mean the Mad Lion, Shad0w? There were actually people like that, bro. Some people thought he just had like a similar name or something. And it's why I always make that joke that, like, because the story in the West with Shad0w goes like this. He was on Mad Lions. People forget he was actually a good player. He had like all those Smurf games on Lee Sin. They went to Worlds. That was the Worlds where infamously they completely bombed and were like a disgrace to the Western Europe, basically. And then the joke is a lot of people forget that, like, that's where he just like disappears into the background. Even though I'm sure he did actually, like, you know, the joke I always make is he just never came back home. He was just like, since he already was Chinese anyway, he was like, you know what, I'll just fucking stay. Yeah, it's like they always used to say, the Koreans famously, the fans say to them, if they fail at an event, they go, just swim home, don't bother coming back. Like, basically, like, the joke is that's almost what happened. And he did for real, just mill around China in like lower half and low ranked teams for years and years and years and years. Got this chance finally to, yeah. Suddenly he gets in a BLG, he's carrying all these games, he's winning matches, and then all of a sudden, some fan, presumably because of that, by the way, like some salty fan, I'm going to guess maybe a rival fan or fan of some team that they beat, some fan basically has like reported him for having dual citizenship. Now, here's the thing. I didn't do a full Richard Lewis deep dive. So if you don't know, by the way, this is why no shithead Pokemon, I'm a guy with a French name, therefore I must do lead journalism. The reason why no esports journalist means anything to me, Yamato, is because they just like Google shit and then like that Gemini AI is like, the laws in China, and then they just hope that's right. Richard Lewis, right, is so next level, Yamato. I'll tell you a very brief story. One time I went to his house when he used to live in Las Vegas about like 7-8 years ago. And when I was there, I was just there to like, you know, spend a weekend there before I went to an event in LA and see Monty and do a bunch of stuff, right? And when I was there, you know, we were sitting watching his massive like 80-inch TV that he watched like the NFL on or whatever. And as we're sitting there, he has a bunch of stuff on his like coffee table, right? Like he had like a fucking box with some weed in and like a big thing. And he was like, oh yeah, Sam, his old producer, that Welsh guy, he's like, he left that there, you know, he was smoking it the whole time. And then next to that, he had like a massive stack of papers, almost like, you know, like a clerical thing of like, you know, like a thing with like, let's say like 40 printouts and like a staple on the top. And I was like, the fuck is this? It looked like a script or something, you might like, what the fuck is this? So I pick it up and I'm not even trolling. The cover page is just like, LA County labor law, bi-regional. And I'm like, what? And I go, okay, why have you got this? And he goes, yeah, I'm almost finished reading it. And I'm like, what? You know, years ago, people won't even remember the story. Years and years ago, there was a really big streamer called Tfue who worked for FaZe Clan at the time. And what happened was there was a big scandal about 7-8 years ago where basically he'd like contacted a lawyer or something. And it was implied something like that the way that FaZe Clan like managed him, they'd sort of like overstepped the boundaries of how labor laws work. I think it was something to do with in California, if someone's technically like an independent contractor, like you don't pay them benefits and healthcare and stuff, you can't actually sort of like treat them like an employee and tell them stuff like, you go here on this day and do this thing. It's more like you just have to like set like the overall thing they do or something. It's some weird, again, this is why the laws, you have to read fucking massive papers about it's super complicated, right? So my point anyway is, I haven't done that. So spoiler, I don't actually know the rules of Chinese immigration or whether you're allowed dual citizenship. But based on the things I've initially read, it appears that basically in China, if you are like a mainland Chinese citizen, in theory, you're not supposed to have a second citizenship somewhere else. And it's implied that as a result of that, they even, when people do go to other countries and somehow get a second citizenship or another passport, they basically don't report it to the Chinese people back home. And they just hope essentially it's never noticed. And in this case, by the way, as far as I can tell, if he didn't try to play in the Chinese League of Legends League, I don't think this guy ever would have been caught. Seems like he would have been fine, you know, coming into China where he wants to, because he'd have his original Chinese passport, I'm guessing. And then if he goes to a Italy. I don't know if his family still lives there or what. In fact, we actually know very little about this player. Then presumably it was all okay. The problem here is when someone's reported him, it appears that even though, look, as far as I can tell, it doesn't seem like this is actually causing him a massive problem. It seems like he's still going to be able to play, and he's just going to be listed, I guess, as like an Italian import to the LPL, which is like, you know what? The joke is we should all just embrace the meme and be like, see, there is an EU player playing in the LPL. Like, and then if he wins like LPL, we'll make like some big deal. But anyway, as far as I can tell, this is actually not as big a drama as it initially seemed. Like, as far as I can tell, the main drama even was more the idea of like, is it a salty fan who's just mad that he won? And they were like, right, report him. Like, which sounds like what it is. What do you think of this story about? I don't even know. This one, I started with this one because I don't think it's that spicy. So I want to know what you think of this aspect.
I don't know. It just reminds me of like the usual bullshit. It's like when you're at the top, suddenly you have like these detectives just keeping your every move. They climb trees. They check what you eat. They find you in gyms. It's just a different life altogether. It's like I wish I knew more about the competitiveness of the fan bases because they are so much more like spread out. It's like in Korea, it's very, very T1 centric. They have basically the majority of market share. But in China, it's like when you have those sizes of fan base, like say rookie fan base, Rajcula, whatever, what happens in the clashes? It's like,
especially because they move teams so often, mate. Like, that's the other thing. It's one thing if, like, I could understand someone being both an IG fan and a rookie fan. He was there for a long time. But I know what you mean. Like, I'll give you the obvious example. Is the weirdest thing about LPL for me is there is so much player movement that, like, when we do this Ascend Nirvana group, the thing that always is jarring to me when I look on the Leaguepedia or Liquipedia, if you are to, is the orgs almost don't matter in LPL because the players just move. So the joke is like BLG used to be a nobody org when like Zika played their ages back in the day, but now they're one of the top orgs. So I know what you mean. My problem there is I know that Fnatic and G2 will always have fans. Plus they're always the top orgs. But for example, I do wonder like, does BLG have fans? Are they just night fans? Have they been fans? I know what you mean. It's really hard to get a sense because I know what you mean. In Korea, it's really obvious who the big fan bases are, who they're fans of. And I think the battle lines are pretty well drawn, but I know what you mean. I have a really hard time figuring out, like, does JDG have fans now Knight and Ruler left? Or did they not have fans? Were they fans of Kanavi? And that, you know what I mean? Like, it's fucking hard to figure out, isn't it? I know what you mean.
That was tricky. I was reading, it's like, now maybe Shad0w now in the off-season, because like getting the work visa, I think should be pretty straightforward. But then that work visa belongs to the team, and it's like tied to that. Maybe there's like off-season issues. There was also like a loophole.
Oh, wait a minute, that would be next level. Oh, Yamato, I figured it out.
What's up?
I figured it out. Are you ready for a classic American TV trope? The call was coming from inside the house. If it's true that this means he needs a work visa that ties him to the BLG org, so he can't just go elsewhere, bro, maybe one of their guys, like, hello, yes, I'd like to report someone not on the right visa, because then you got trapped, bro. Because actually, along similar lines, I can tell you that is actually one of the problems that you do have in America, believe it or not, is if you ever have, I've had one, if you ever have a work visa, that, because it has to actually be attached to the company that's giving you the job, it does mean, even though in theory you'd hope they wouldn't, that actually means that company at that point in time can basically exploit you, because they can just be like, look, if I fire you tomorrow, I mean, by the way, America's is nuts. There's for real, by the way, is the second you're fired, you have something mad like 2 weeks to just get the fuck out the country. And if you haven't, you're just like illegally overstaying your visa at that point in time and you're in a lot of trouble. So, no, bro, I'm joking now. I don't actually think it was someone in BLG, but I'll tell you what, it would be a pretty like Machiavellian way to trap this guy in the org. And by the way, that would even be appropriate, Yamato. Think about that, taking a bit of... What they do is go, oh, hello, Shad0w, Chinese player. We're going to take some of the advice of Machiavelli. You might appreciate him. Yeah, you're. Which one is it? Which are you? Are you a Sun Tzu guy or a Machiavelli guy? Shad0w's like, oh, Machiavelli, never heard of him. The joke is, they are doing all that shit, Yamato. They're taking out like raw pasta and just breaking it, going, any reaction? He's like, no, I prefer noodles, glass noodles. Because, by the way, do you actually know anything about Shad0w? Because I have to say, he was actually a very quiet player when he was in Europe, man. I never felt like this guy had fanfare around him. Like, I actually know very little about this player, despite the fact I watched him play in LEC and I've watched him in LPL for years. Like, I know almost nothing about him, mate.
It was so short, like, lived his stay in the LEC, because it was like, oh, Peter Dunn found him. It was like on the team with Orome, and then like they were the only team in Europe that beat G2 in a BO5. Like during the COVID, there was like in Spring Split, they beat him at the infamous Caps ADC Ziggs game where they couldn't kill the Nexus. And that was a crazy good all I've gained
Yep.
from Shad0w. And then it was just that world stint that really just made them fall apart. And additionally, that they had Elioya waiting. Like maybe if Elioya would come in year later, maybe he would still be in Europe. It's interesting how fragile some careers are. But due to, like, I was working the LEC, and then it was just Corona hit, and then we were doing everything remotely. And then I went over to Korea. So I've never had like interaction with him, but I'm trying to reach out to him. Maybe me and Dom can do like a Sackdown episode with him, because it's
That'd
like
be cool.
It's very rare that we get to have someone that's been in both worlds and can actually tell us.
I'm assuming he can speak Mandarin, bro. So he must have the most unique actual like insight that he actually for real was an LEC player, but he also hasn't just like been in a LPL team and he was like, I don't know what they were saying. Like he presumably knows how it all works. I imagine he could give you some really good insight. That you should see if you can set that up, mate. It'd be really interesting.
I hope so. I hope so.
And here's the thing as well. I have to say, one of the other reasons why there's not much fanfare about that player, Yamato, and I actually think most fans probably don't even remember, and they probably in their brain just think it was Elioya that was there the whole time because he kind of overwrote him the next year and won all those championships. I think the other part that would be interesting if he could do some sort of an interview is I know that in particular, Peter Dunn, who even though I do Best Damn League show with him, the LEC show, I was obviously talking to this guy over the years anyway. I've known him basically ever since he's been in LEC. And I remember he did say something back in the day that like there's some particular reason he matters. I don't know what it is, obviously, and I couldn't say if I did, but there's some reason that they also don't talk about why Shad0w like magically left the Mad Lions and went to the LPL team. I think it was implied something like, I don't know, maybe he got like bombed out with the scene and he didn't want to play pro anymore, or I don't know what it is. It was almost implied like maybe he had like some sort of mental breakdown at that Worlds. That's why they did shit or something like that, you know? So I'd also like to know, like, does it, like now that it's years later, because it is, by the way, we're talking, it's 5 years later, bro. Surely now we can sort of give some sort of PR explanation of what happened, you know, like whether it was like, you know, I had to find myself or it was too stressful at the time, or I just wanted to, maybe I didn't want to play with those stakes. I just wanted to be on a random team and just play for fun or whatever it might be. Because that's the other thing. Once this guy left, because he came off the bad Worlds, and when I was asking at the time, everyone was sort of like, oh, yeah, we can't talk about why, though. I remember thinking, oh, well, this guy's done then. He's never coming back then. The idea years later, through some of the bad teams, he would get back on BLG. Because, by the way, we can obviously tie that to the bigger topic, which is he got on the team very similar to how Beishuan did, which is they're on the, like, beggars can't be choosers point of their career, where, because they've waited until this fucking late in the spring and then now we're like early in the summer split. There's just not many options as to who you can sign at that point in time. You're not going to get, like, Kanavi come to your team then. He's already playing for someone, like, so essentially it's one of those things where the opportunity, this is a great piece of advice in life. It's why people tell you, like, you don't just like sit around doing nothing and then get an opportunity to go, right, I better start working. No, you keep your fucking game tweaked and fresh so that when the opportunity comes like this, you might actually have a few Smurf games and suddenly you're in. Because, by the way, if this motherfucker now goes to Worlds and has like a deep playoff run, he'd probably just be in BLG next year, man. Like, it's totally plausible. He might have turned his whole career around after being essentially in the wilderness.
Oh, definitely. It's like I had some fine moments, like even last split, there was like fine moments, but I didn't think much of him. It's crazy how some opportunities just appear because teams like implode. It's like it's very strange how, especially in competition, everything works, because now Bilibili, like their biggest advantage is not only that things are working out with Shad0w, but also the fact that AL is like falling apart completely. So now suddenly Bilibili just looked like a front runner and he can win his first split so deep into his career, and suddenly everything is just rewritten. It's interesting how fragile things are and how just being ready. It's like it's an advice that I've given to players that have come to me with concerns about their teammates. Like, oh, I can't play with this guy, whatever. And it's like the advice I always give is like, you got to work in a way that eventually you reach a point where you're surrounded by people that work the same way as you. Sometimes it doesn't happen because you're unlucky. Sometimes you're lucky and it happens faster, but you got to increase your odds, you know? It's like luck is where opportunity and preparation meets. You just got to push.
Yes.
And then it's like in the end, if you are surrounded by shit teammates, you know, maybe that's on you too, you know? Except Rookie. Rookie bears no faults for his career choices.
Listen, all I'm going to say is so far, look, I'll also give congrats. This is one of the rare times I'll reach across the aisle and give the olive branch to Faker fans. Tell you what, if you're Faker and Rookie fans, we're all fucking sitting pretty, mate. Where's all our scandals? We're just fucking, our players are just ballers who just go on the server and fucking bang it out like, yeah, there's no drama. Just fucking, you know. I'll even say, actually, to be fair, I even do think, look, we'll get later to the T1 drama, but one thing I've actually been even mildly actually impressed with people like Faker is he never seemed like he ever tried to stir the drama. Do you know what I mean? He could, that guy, by the way, if he had a bad attitude, could have insane impact on the esports industry. Like, imagine if he just did the old thing, which, by the way, he could do at any moment in time. You just do the old classic English king move of like, who will rid me of this troublesome priest? Like, if you just complain in the right way, your fan base would go fucking nuts and they'd go, yes, sir. And they just go and do what they think you want them to do.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.